After a pretty solid stage 1, stage 2 was an absolute tragedy. I don't think anyone would have expected Falcons to completely choke out of the major, and of course, a Legacy 3-0 is an insane timeline, along with some of the teams that made it through. I really can't believe it. But hey, there we are, 2 correct picks. So everybody laugh at me down in the comments and let me know what you got as well. Did you guys get 5 picks? I can't imagine actually getting 5 at this stage. But hey, we're gonna do our best to go ahead and lock in and still go for that gold coin and get all the correct picks for stage 3. But before we do, I want to thank today's sponsor, Skins Monkey. For those of you that don't know, Skins Monkey is an automated CS2 trading site that allows you to select the old skins you don't want anymore and pick out some new ones from the monkey. It's a great way to freshen up that old dusty inventory, and hey, that's not all. They have some amazing filter and selection features, as well as 24/7 live support. If you click the link in the description, you can get a free $5 and a 30% deposit bonus that becomes 35% if you use my code TACTICS on the site. Don't miss out on this offer and check out Skins Monkey today. Let's get back into the video. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with my tier list, and then eventually we'll go on and do the in-game picks once Valve actually releases those. Slight disclaimer at the time of recording this, FaZe is still playing MIBR, so I'm not sure how that's going to turn out, but we'll get there when we get there. So let's go ahead and get started with Navi. So, to be honest, on paper, I would say this is a team that should be going through. I am pretty tempted to put them in A tier, although recent results would kind of point towards a little bit of a shakier form. So, anywhere between A and B. I think for now I'll keep them towards the end of A tier, and we'll see how we're looking a little bit later. Now, when it comes to a team like Furia, I do have a little bit of a difficulty rating them. At first, I'm tempted to put them into D tier, but they looked pretty solid throughout stage 2 of the major, and that proves to me that Astana run wasn't just completely a fluke or a honeymoon period. I think the firepower they have on that roster, with Yekender looking like he's returning a little bit to his old self, Fallen doesn't look terrible on the rifle, they have a great op prospect. I think this is a team that could potentially be towards the end of B tier, but we'll see how many teams we end up putting into B tier. They're going to most likely get dropped down to D, but for now, we're going B tier. So now let's talk a little bit about Virtus Pro. Obviously, I took quite a bit of flack in the last stage for just putting them through, and they just dominated 3-0. So their form, I would say, is a little bit better than Furia, but against this level of competition, I really don't know. Again, if they figured something out, definitely, they have the firepower to make it to the playoffs, but it's pretty surprising for me to be saying VP are making playoffs of the major. Now, of course, Team Vitality are currently on a historic win streak. They're by far the favorites to win this major. They have beaten every single team. They have won so many tournaments in a row. It's almost impossible to not pick them for 3-0. Pretty similar to how Falcons were the 99% 3-0 pick in the last stage, and we all know how that turned out. But if anyone can 3-0 and dominate to even a major victory, it's going to be Team Vitality. Now, G2 is a team that I have no idea where to rate. The majority of Hades' tenure here, he's been playing with Taz as a stand-in for most of Astana. They had shaky-looking results in Dallas, but they didn't look terrible. They still have plenty of firepower in Mobs and Heavy God. I don't see any reason they wouldn't be able to make it to the playoffs, but right now, it's kind of hard to say. I'm going to put them at the very bottom of B tier. And again, that's just kind of a hunch, to be completely honest. Speaking of hard to rate teams, Namiga's one that honestly I have underestimated every single stage. I don't think I've had them going through and advancing yet, and they just keep surprising me. But looking at all the teams here at this stage of competition, I don't see them really beating many of them, so I think that's going to be one of my potential 0-3s. And as much as it pains me to say it, I feel the same way about Linvision. It's been awesome to see them make it through. Amelia has been aura farming the entire event while still being face it level 6 back home in China. I'm going to have to also put them at 0-3. It really does pain me to see it. It's been fun to watch a Chinese team really make it through. But again, very similar to Namiga, I just don't see them beating many of the names here. 3D Max is yet another team that is kind of difficult to rate. I think they're probably better than G2. They looked arguably better than Furia. I just put them right there in the mix. They beat FaZe 2-0. They looked pretty good while doing it. The firepower has looked solid for them. I have a hard time putting them below a Furia or a G2, so that might end up bumping one of these teams down to the eliminated stage. We'll see. All right, so now let's talk about another team that I just keep underestimating. Legacy, while still not qualifying for this event, got a lucky invite based off of Bestia and have just taken 100% charge of that. They have made the most out of this situation and have grinded through stage 1 and dominated through stage 2 for a fantastic record. They've looked better and better as the event has gone on. So it's hard not to say, if we're putting VP here, it's hard not to put Legacy, but still against this level of competition, just don't think they're gonna make it through. But hey, now let's talk a little bit about the Mongols. This is a team that I think should be going right here to the very tip top of A tier. They always tend to perform well at majors, especially in these opening stages before the playoffs, and at pretty much any event, they tend to dominate their way through group stages. The stage is where it gets a little bit shaky, but hey, we'll talk about that when the time comes. Now, Liquid's a team that I could also see making it through to the playoffs, just based on star firepower alone. However, they haven't looked that good as of late. I'm inclined to put them above a team like G2, maybe even above Furia, but that's about as far as I'm willing to go. That would bump G2 down to the top of D tier in my opinion, and it might also bump Furia. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Now, Mouse is a team that definitely belong in S tier. I think the only teams that they've lost to are Vitality and Falcons. That's it. They've only lost to those two teams. I think based on this level of competition, unless they run into a team like Vitality on the way through, or maybe even Spirit, I think they're going to have a decent enough chance at going 3-0. I would also tend to put Spirit up here as well with Mouse. I think these are the three teams that I would rate the highest, the teams that I think have the highest potential of going 3-0 in this stage of the event. We're just going to have to wait for the opening matchups and kind of make our judgment based off of that. Now, we can go ahead and move on to Aurora, which, again, very similar to the Mongols, I would say are a solid A tier choice. I would put them right in between the Mongols and Na'Vi. I think they're all kind of on the same playing field. Again, very notorious group stage merchants. They don't do that well in front of the crowd, so we'll talk about that when we get there, but for now, I think that's a solid A tier choice for this stage of the event. Now, Pain is a team that I underestimated last stage. I kind of forgot that they'd been playing with a stand-in for the majority of the year, so I do somewhat regret picking them for 0-3. They looked very solid. I would say they are pretty similar to Furia. I would rate them about the same, maybe a little bit above Furia. But looking at what we've got right now, we can only pick 6 teams to go through. So I think that would honestly bump Furia and Pain both down into the top of D tier. And this is pretty much what I'm looking at until we figure out whether FaZe or MIBR are going to be advancing. Of course, that's still leaving 3 teams in S tier. I'm just going to have to wait until the opening matchups are released, and whichever of these 2 teams have the easier matchup, that's who I'm going to pick for my 3-0. I think it's just, they're so even. I think the only team Spirit's lost to outside of like Vitality Falcons is Mal's, so I kind of rate Mal's a little bit higher than Spirit, but it's oftentimes the donk show, so I think these are almost a 50-50 choice. I think just base it off of a gut feeling or the opening matchup. That's going to be your best bet. Okay, so after a pretty intense second map, FaZe did manage to pull it off. They are going on to stage 3. Where in the world do I rate them? I really don't know. It's FaZe Magic. I want to overrate them. I want to see Elige do well in Austin. Simple is just, it's just so exciting to watch this team play again, but oh man, am I having a hard time placing this. I want to say they could definitely make it to playoffs if they're in shape, but man, they have struggled against a lot of teams here. So I would, honestly, I'm going to rate them just below Team Liquid, I would say, and then we'll take a look at the opening matchups, and we'll just talk about how exactly we're going to pull this off here in just a moment. Alright, so Valve have gone ahead and updated Stage 3 of the Pick'ems, and Blast has already released the opening matchup. So it's time for us to go ahead and lock these in. Obviously, Vitality is my 3-0 pick. They're going up against Legacy. I feel pretty good about that, but again, anything can happen in a best of 1. Of course, in the tier list, we had Mal's and Spirit narrowed down, and to be completely honest, I feel better about Spirit beating Pain than I do Mal's beating Virtus Pro after the form we saw from VP. So I'm going to go ahead and put Spirit as my second 3-0 pick, and I'm going to have Mal's at the very top of the advanced column. And of course, that brings us to our favorite group stage merchants, the Mongols and Aurora. I think they shouldn't have too much of an issue moving on to the playoffs. we'll see how they perform there, but I think these are decent picks to just have them advance. That brings us over to Na'Vi, a team that has looked a little shaky, but I still think versus all of these teams here, they should be able to make it through to the stage. Now that leaves us 2 spots to advance, and I have about 4 teams that I could pretty much see myself picking. Honestly, I've felt pretty good about Virtus.pro's form, but we've only seen 3 series from them. They looked miserable beforehand. They're going to be playing way better competition. So the more I think about them, I think maybe I overrated them a little bit in the tier list. With these 2 remaining teams, I don't think it's a bad pick. But if we're also leaving Legacy off, I think Virtus.pro also deserves to not be on there. Not feeling good about G2. I think really 3D Max is a team also you could almost put through. They also did not look good before this major. Not too confident there. Liquid's kind of in the same boat. Honestly, safest pick might be VP, but I'm going to go with Liquid. And then just for a pure hope pick, I'm throwing FaZe to go through. This is not really based in who I think is going to perform the best on this last one, because I've already thrown the diamond coin, as you guys saw. But I want FaZe, I want Liquid to go through. The rest of these are you know, very reasonable, safe picks. These are kind of my riskier ones, I would say. And then for the 0-3, what do we have? Namiga playing Na'Vi, and then we have Linvision playing Liquid. I feel okay about those being losses. Of course, Legacy are playing Vitality to start, but I'm not putting Legacy in my 0-3. I refuse to do it after they went 3-0. I don't think they deserve that. And then I'm just going to be leaving out Pain and Furia, who are honorable mentions. Would not be too surprised if I saw you throw them in there. But yeah, guys, I think this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to go ahead and lock these in, and hopefully we make it through. I'm still going for that gold coin. Will we get it? We don't know. But hey, I'll see you guys in the next one.